And then admit. Where's the sound? Oh.
We stand at the threshold of a great dawning. Something deep within life is changing. An era is ending. And at the very core of creation, something new is being born. We are awakening from a long collective sleep, an in vitro dreaming deep within the womb of our Mother Earth. Now is the time of a great shifting of cosmic wheels, which will result in the reformation of our Earth and trigger a radical shift in consciousness. A galactic tidal wave of light is descending upon the Earth, activating the highest potential, raising the frequency. Reality is being reformed, redefined. The activation of new neural patterns will trigger new perceptions, new information, new impulses, and the recalibration of DNA. Open yourself to these high-dimensional frequencies. Let go. Love each other in these coming times. Be kind to each other. Gather in community. Share yourself. Live your dream. Live your heart. Open yourself. Be prepared for the challenges to come, the dark times of chaos and upheaval. We will experience a dynamic recalibration of electromagnetic fields and Earth systems on a global scale. Stay present. Stay calm and centered. Try not to judge what is happening. Surrender to the process. Hold firm in the knowledge of what is being birthed. The process of birthing is an awesome undertaking, an arduous task.
Welcome, everyone, to tonight's exciting journey with kink, with domination and submission with my dear sister, Sonia Semenyova. I'd love to get a round of applause for her because she's just so fucking epic. Welcome. Oh, it's so nice to see too some of your outfits as well, which is great. It's always fun to get dressed up for these experiences. Well, I'm just getting set up here. I'd love to hear in the chat if you can share maybe just one thing that brought you here tonight, to tonight's journey in particular. Maybe it's a fascination, maybe you've never explored kink before, maybe you're curious. Yeah, if you can just pop that in the chat here. And I'd love to just share, we share with Sonia because this is kind of a different journey that we're about to go on tonight.
Yeah.
But it's also really important for women to explore their power through really healing forms such as BDSM. So I'd love to just hear what is coming through for you. So if you want to just put even one sentence in the chat, I'm seeing exploring kink in an empowered way. I've played a good bit in the
Mm.
kink scene and find it really healing. So I was
Mm.
looking forward to hearing more of that perspective. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, tonight, I'm sure more will roll in. Tonight, I wanted to share that we're going to be getting into the full range of feminine power, from the playful and surrendered kitten to the magnetic, seductive Dom. And it's going to give you access to paint with an entirely new palette in the bedroom and outside of it. So I'm really excited for us to blow up ideas about fitting in, playing nice, and really fucking with societal norms about what it is to be a woman, especially tonight with this one here. And I just want to share like just a little brief story before I get into her
Oh,
actual
okay.
bio. So Sonia and I actually met on Vancouver Island at my eco farm that I think I told all of you about earlier today in our ceremony. And I was like, man, there's just something about this woman. And the moment her and her partner at the time shared that they were into Tantra, I was like, okay, let's go, let's talk. And then from there, we, gosh, have been on a couple year
Mhm.
journey. We have birthed erotic ritual theater together, which is a very immersive ritual art experience into sexuality, archetypes, myth, story,
Mhm.
kink. And we founded the Holy Arrows Institute
Mhm.
last year, which is our baby, which has courses and
Mhm.
trainings around sacred sexuality. But there's so much more to Sonia than just how I know her. And she's also a phenomenal writer. She published a book, what was it, last year?
Last year, almost exactly 1 year ago. Almost
Okay.
exactly 1 year ago. Yeah.
Letters to
Letters to my lovers.
Letters to My Lovers.
Yeah.
I've read it. It's amazing. And she's also an intimacy coach and initiatrix. And so working for more than 2 decades as a trauma-informed healer, Sonia helps women who struggle in love to learn how to surrender, okay, and claim their power and craft their relationship with their dreams. And her work and life really bridges the gap between spirituality and sexuality by honoring the body as a temple of the divine. So she does pull on like her diverse training in intuitive healing, somatic sex education, conscious kink, witchcraft, mysticism, and mythology to guide clients to heal the nervous system and connect with spirit to find deeper intimacy, hotter sex, and a greater capacity for love. So thank you, Sonia,
Mm.
for bringing your juju here today with all of us. And we're going to start, maybe we'll just start with a bit of an overview. We are going to dive into a little bit of her personal story about how she got into the amazing work that she's in. So if you do have questions as well, like feel free to put them in the chat, right? We really want this to be a dialogue. There is going to be some practices that she's going to bring us through to connect to our inner dominatrix.
And your inner sex kitten.
Okay, there we go.
Both.
Yeah, so this will be immersive. It's not just like listening to talking the entire time. So it will be immersive, but we'll start out with just a bit of an intro,
Mhm.
and then she's going to kind of share some practices that have helped her in her work. And we still have more people joining the room, which is great. So for those of you watching back at home, the recording, you can always send Sonia messages on Instagram as well. You can find her at The Body Story.
No,
No,
body storyteller.
The Body Storyteller.
No, body storyteller.
Body
No
Story.
thought. No thought.
Okay.
You're the thought.
I'll put it in the chat. So and I want to read a few more of these comments before we get into I want to ask you a juicy question
Mhm.
here.
Okay.
So we've had people share that they came here because there's a curiosity.
Mhm.
Few curious. The only kink I've explored is existential kink.
Great
Yes.
one. Great place to begin. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. And then curiosity is how it can heal. So, yeah, beautiful. I'm also seeing here practice. I'm a practicing sensuous Dom and love to bring sacred sexuality
Mhm.
into my work.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I think Sonia can share all about this
I'm reading.
because,
I'm reading the rest of that comment.
oh,
There's so much there. No, it's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, it's making sure that clients feel safe, seen, and comfortable, right? Yeah.
mm,
Okay. That's the beauty of the feminine power at work, which we're going to go into. So, yay.
I think we're all curious to hear, Sonia, like how did you get into Dom work? Because
Yeah.
actually I have quite a few Dom friends in my life, and the kitchen table dinner conversations that we have, like we had one like a month ago, and it was hilarious,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
She lives with a bunch of guys, right? And so we're sitting around the table sharing stories. And all of her roommates at one point in time had like come in individually and just watched their faces. They were like, "Rah!" And they just left because, we're just a bunch of witches cackling around the table and, telling very, very juicy stories. So yeah, that was a really great night. Yeah.
So that was a great moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure that everyone's curious, just to hear a little bit about how
Yeah.
you got into this, because
Hmm.
being a professional dominatrix, I mean, and I'm sure there's many questions that will come through, but
Hmm.
yeah, what
Yeah.
was like the gateway?
The gateway drug. Well,
Yeah.
honestly, okay. So I always like to say, I always like to say that I started off as a submissive in most
Mm,
of my relationships, and then I bratted so hard, I turned into a dom. And so, for those of you who are new to kink, like being a brat is like where you have this experience where you purposely act up to your dom, right? Like you purposely act up, and part of it is testing. Like I'm a hard person to dom, generally speaking. Like I tell anyone who I'm playing with who's a dom, like I'm like you're gonna have to work for it. It doesn't just come. And oh, shoot, that's the person.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We're still tending to the waiting room here. So
There we go.
essentially, I had a partner and he was mostly Dom, but then he wanted to switch and he was really curious about exploring that with me. And so I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll do it. I'll try it out. Because I kept on getting these requests from men on dating apps in particular. People would be like, will you dom me? And I was like, I don't know if that's really my thing. And like just kept on resisting. I'm like, I'm so submissive. I'm so submissive. And then when I did it the first time, I felt the power in it, and I felt the shift in my body, and I felt not only like a shift in my body, but like it transformed my history of being a woman raised as a woman in
Hmm.
this society, like somebody who's experienced sexual assault, somebody who hasn't always known what it's like to actually be able to have a voice for myself in the bedroom. And I remember standing there, I had heels on, and I was spanking him with a ruler, and we had
So
this.
was he a lover or a client?
He was a lover. He
Okay.
was a lover. You know him. And, and we were
Okay.
doing this whole like teacher student scene. And and I was like, oh, I get it. I get it. And I understood finally what it, because I had understood the healing side from the surrender, willing surrender to a
Mm,
partner. Like when you find someone who truly can offer you that level of trust
mm,
and that you trust yourself to be able to uphold your own limits, that is so powerful and healing. So I knew it from that side, but I didn't know it from the other side. And I'd seen a lot of
mm,
male doms.
mm,
And in the male doms, like what I see is that there's a lot of sexual gratification that's involved with doming. And that's not necessarily what I've known femdoms, which is the woman dom. Femdoms don't necessarily get that same, like, they're not like trying to, necessarily get off all the time, right? There's a power that's at play. And
mm.
the power is so erotic and it's such a turn on. And that's what like when I get turned on in a scene, that is from the power. Like somebody is giving themselves over to me, and that is hot.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, I mean, I started getting more requests, and it was just finally one request that I had for like a first paying client, and then I was like, all right, I'll try it. And so I tried it, and I was like, actually, I'm kind of good at this.
Mm,
And I
okay.
recognize that that the range of it is where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I was curious. Like, I mean, I've known you since you've gotten into this,
Mhm.
right? But I'm sure everyone wonders, like, so then did you work under a dom, or did you take some
Mhm.
classes, or do you kind of just fuck around and find out? Or is it a mixture of all of the above?
All of the above. Like
Yeah.
I'm a huge, like I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to sexuality. So I do read a lot of books. And so
Mm,
like Princess Kali, I'm not sure if anyone's ever studied or anything from her or read anything by her, that she's a really like no nonsense. She'll teach you all the techniques around things like erotic humiliation and findom, and like she's really oddly very like just clear about it. And so I studied with her a bit, studied with
Princess Callie. Okay.
Princess Callie, yep. And then
Let's put that in the
Colette
chat.
Hervet is another dom that I studied with. And I also studied for many years. And around the energetics of Dom sub attention states with Kasha Urbaniak. And she
Mm.
is like absolutely, while she never taught me a single bit of technique, what I've learned from Kasha in the, I don't know, 4 or 5 years that I've been studying with her, and I've still continued to study with her, she has taught me far more about the energetics. And that speaks to me because I have been a practicing intuitive for 20 something years. And so I was like, oh, I get it.
Mm.
And so once I got that in place, it was like, okay, now here is the technique part that you need to actually pick up.
Mm.
But I was lucky enough to have people who were like partners who were just like, you can just try things out.
Mm.
And that's a fuck around and find out. And that's when you learn how to do things like calibrate and you're not going
Mhm.
to go too hard. But yeah, like there's the thing that I'm more and more passionate about is actually really opening this to women, right? To
Mm.
giving women this experience of having that space to safely surrender
Mhm.
in the care of another woman.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Because, yeah, I think, sometimes the question that comes up, for people, like, again, and there's no silly questions. So I do want to presence that for anyone here. If you have a question, you're like, I'm kind of afraid to ask this, like, you can just DM me privately and I
Mhm.
can ask it anonymously. Because, there's all kinds of questions that can come up. Like, maybe I'll ask a silly question
Do it.
that's not so
Yeah.
silly, but like, for someone like myself, I think of myself as pretty hetero, right?
Mhm.
I love men, I love cocks, I love everything
You
about the male.
do.
I do, like I'm not the queerest person in the room,
Mhm.
queerest crayon in the box, right? So, sometimes like a question that can come up, I think, for people is like, well, is this going to be sexual?
Mhm.
And it's actually like, I think some of the foundational things around kink that aren't maybe as understood from the outside is that uh, there's a level of surrender that you get.
Mhm.
Say when you're tied up or when you are giving away your power, there's actually a beautiful surrender that happens that really allows like the nervous system to relax. And I think as an adult, right? Like when you're a kid, right? Your parents take care of
Mhm.
everything. They like you just get to play. Well, if you were lucky to have a good childhood, play, be a kid, right? You don't have
Mhm.
to bear the burden of responsibility,
Yeah.
right? And so as an adult, we
Mhm.
have all these responsibilities. And my experience of being with someone who was a dom was like, man, when I was tied up, couldn't
Mhm.
say a word, couldn't do anything, and all I could
Mhm.
do was receive pleasure. I went into what's called subspace, and it's like this place where
Mhm.
you are just emotion and feeling.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about nothing. You're just like, I am
Mhm.
ecstatic light, orgasming for like
Yeah.
an hour.
Yeah.
It's powerful. So would you say that you have had those experiences being in like the sub role, and that's kind of what
Mhm.
happens when people go into the spaces?
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, I've been doing work with clients around surrender for my entire
Yeah.
career as a healer and a coach, right? Like it has been the primary thing that I've been working with my clients on. And a lot of people, I mean, I've spent
Mm.
years working with like people, like one person in particular, I remember I still work with her on this topic around just her resistance to surrender, her belief that surrender means that she's waving a white flag, that she's, resigning herself, that, it's that fear of giving up one's will.
Mhm.
And that is true. And it's not, so I want to say this, it's not always safe to do to everybody,
Mhm.
for everybody. Like not everyone has your best interests at heart, right? That is just bottom line true.
Mhm.
And surrender, yeah, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surrender is something that can be extremely powerful. Like if you actually think about this, all spiritual traditions, like all meditations that we do, all yogic practices that we do, all the breath work, right? What we're actually trying to get to is that state of surrender. And it is
Mm.
so beautiful for anyone who's ever actually accessed it, whether through sex
Mhm.
or through some spiritual practice. You understand the bliss that's there
Mm.
and you love it. You
Mhm.
love it.
I want to get to this question, this really great question here, in a second. I think one thing too, like maybe is there also maybe a fear around kink or BDSM because especially if you see it like just through the medium of like what's out there in porn,
Yeah.
it's actually not very accurate.
I would say so. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
a
to
lot
what
of a
happens.
lot of the clients that I see, I have to actually re-educate them. I'm like, I'm not going to come in and like, do the things that you've seen on porn.
Mhm.
And it's so especially there's a difference, especially with paying a professional. Some professionals have different levels of work. Like I have my boundaries that I set with my clients around how I engage and offer my body, which is basically nothing.
Quite a
Which
few DOMs I know are like that.
there
They're,
are a
yeah.
lot, yeah. And like that's the beauty of being a Dom is that you get to
Mhm.
set the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And there are Doms who are out there, and I fully respect them if they want to offer their bodies as part of the experience. 100%. Like that is on you. The beauty of being a Dom, like getting into the Dom goddess energy, is that
Mm.
you get to set the terms. And
Mm.
where else in your life do you actually get to do that? Nowhere. Nowhere. Like I get to come
Yeah.
in and be like, I'm going to be fully clothed the whole time, and I
Yeah.
want you to strip naked.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to be a dom once. I was not very good at it, professionally. Gave it a shot though, but what was funny was how, they just were like, here, take my money. And I was like, okay, uh, like, okay, now and they just
Yeah.
kind of were like, okay, those guys were like that.
Mhm.
They just kind of wanted
Yeah.
the experience
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like, but yeah, I think my experience
Yeah.
was having somebody wanting me to stick rods up their urethra. And I was like,
Yeah, the sounding. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
was like, no, not
yeah.
into that.
That I would not go for a
That,
first timer with
yeah,
that. Like
no,
that's not your first Dom call,
no,
right? Like no, that's
yeah.
advanced. That's pretty advanced.
No, I ran away
Yeah.
pretty fast. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
not my work, not my work. I'll stick with
Yeah.
Tantra, not my work. But
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so the questions that I sit with a lot are where I'm at right now is where I'm
Mm,
most passionate is this idea of showing women, teaching women that you can actually access this.
mm.
Like what I'm talking about offering women isn't necessarily come to my dungeon and let me beat you, right? Like
That's the other piece. Everyone thinks it's always about pain.
everyone thinks it's always about pain. Everyone thinks that you're going to get the shit beat out of you. And that sometimes is true. There are some, what we call pain sluts. There are some people who love it, and that's super. I have a bit of a sadistic side, so I love getting a pain slut sometimes, but it's also like if I have a lover, it's not something I'm really that into, like a little bit, but not like I'm not going to draw blood or something,
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
what I was going to get to is this idea of like I am stepping into this place of like showing women how to access that whole range from surrender to full command.
Mm,
And that is power. And it's a redefinition of power because we always think of power as power over, right? Like, I'm going to tell you what to do. And that's a taboo for women to step into that role.
mm,
But I also want to say that surrender is a tremendous form of power that is
mm,
overlooked.
mhm,
And I think it's overlooked because it does fall into the feminine category of the world.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
it's not seen as a form of power, but it's a beautiful feeling when you give up your will. And
So there's this great question. I kind of want to lead into it, which is with you,
mhm,
which is, we talk about the spectrum of the feminine, right? And it sounds a little like, what the fuck is that? I like to think of it as like, we get to be all of it. We don't have to just categorize ourselves as like the nice girl over here. We actually get to be like the holy whore.
mhm.
We can be dominant and we can be surrendered.
Yes.
And that's what it means to be full spectrum. It means to be fully accessing all the different parts of ourselves that want to come out and play. Um,
Mhm.
and I want to share this piece that relates to this question, and I'd love to hear
Mhm.
what you have to say around it. So, my introduction into kink about 5, 6 years ago by a lover really helped me to surrender during sex and in
Mhm.
pleasure. I'm a pretty dominant woman by nature. I like I walk into a room, I'm like, I want this.
Yeah.
Hey, it's you. I know everybody. Like, and yeah,
I love you
being
for that, by the way.
being control. Yeah. Like I love being control sometimes, yeah, it is charismatic, being in my big energy. But there was this piece that I really had a hard time accessing, and it was through being tied up, having a
Mhm.
ball gag in my mouth, having a lover that I trusted to just worship me and pleasure me
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
hours. And I can't tell you how fucking deep you can go into yourself when like you have someone that you can trust to hold that space and explore that with you, and to let go. And I always prescribe like kink and this
Mhm.
kind of practice, especially with women who have a hard time letting go, because it actually helps you surrender
Yeah.
into
Mhm.
that part of your feminine. right? It's not just one part. And we were talking about this before we got on,
Hmm.
how a
Hmm.
lot of polarity coaches and a lot of intimacy coaches always talk about, oh, the soft feminine, oh, this
No.
and that. We're a whole
We
range.
are a range. We have a whole universe within us. And that's
Yeah.
the thing that I think is really missing when I hear polarity coaches talk. Like I oftentimes roll my eyes for those kinds of reasons because it's like you're
Yes, be
acting,
soft and submissive.
yeah, like
Yeah.
be soft and submissive and always say yes. And it's like, sure, if that is something that you really want to offer someone
Hmm.
and so there's a question that was a
Yeah.
direct message that I'm not gonna read directly, but I'm just gonna answer it in a
Hmm.
way that I'm gonna share a little bit about the question. So it's
Yeah.
somebody is sharing that they have resistance to surrendering during sex, okay? And also in self-pleasure. And how do you um sorry, I need to be able to, yeah. How do I have my glasses?
Oh,
Yeah. And so yeah, so feeling
how,
disconnected and suffocated by, yeah, and so asking about self practices. Okay, so
yeah.
we all have resistance to surrender, and we should. Like we should, okay? Because the reality is not everyone has your best interests.
Mm.
And this is the issue that I have right now with I seeing a lot of people going out and trying kink from dating apps, right? You go and you match with some guy and he says he's a dom, and then he fucks with your head. Look, I've had it happen to me. I've had it happen to several girlfriends, right? This is big energy. When you're giving over your will to someone, there's a reason that these alarm bells go off because they're telling you trust that you have to test this out first. You have to test this out. You have to really determine over a period of time whether this person is who they say they are. Do not give your body and mind over to a random person you met on Bumble. Okay?
They're probably not on Bumble, but they're
They're
probably
on Fields, they're
they're
on
on
Tinder.
Fields.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
don't know.
Bumble, they're like, hey, you want to go for a cup of
Yeah,
coffee?
Bumble's the one where the women have to initiate, right?
Yeah,
That's like the
yeah, yeah,
femdom app.
yeah, yeah,
But I do
yeah.
want to say that, like, I want to first honor that. I want to honor that you don't feel comfortable giving
Mhm.
yourself over, giving your surrender over. I completely support you doing that, not doing that. And if I were working with you, what I would say is we would sit together without any expectation of you doing that
Mm,
for some time until you felt ready,
mm,
until you felt ready. Because just like, people have say they're like, oh, I have blocks around orgasm. I have blocks around certain sexual acts with partners.
mm,
Good. Good. Let those things be a real gift because
mm,
surrender, like when you begin to understand this spectrum here, surrender is such an incredible gift. You're giving your body over to someone for their pleasure.
mm,
And you can see yourself as just the most precious jewel in the world.
mm,
And you don't give that to everybody.
mhm,
And so when you find a partner who actually is able to carry that jewel, to like put it tenderly in a case and
mhm,
hold it,
mhm,
and then like use it with all their dirty fantasies
mm,
with your consent,
mhm,
that is hot.
mhm. Yeah,
But it's earned.
yeah.
Trust is earned. Yeah, just in the message there. And yeah.
So what are some other practices then? Like is like getting maybe going to a shibari class, something like
Hmm.
learning how to tie yourself, maybe.
Yep. So I do recommend, I think if for self kink, you can do self tying. You can do shibari for yourself. You can honestly, there's a website it's called Shibari Academy, I believe.
Oh.
And there I offer that because it's like the most vanilla way to offer shibari training. It's so basic. It's just like, here's how you do the ties.
Mhm.
It's nothing sexual about it. So there's nothing to get triggered about. It's like basically, here's what this kind of knot looks like,
Yeah, yeah.
And I do this a lot. Like I'll just tie up my legs and, it's so fun. And for me, rope has an incredible immediate sense of surrender. Like when I am tied, I am just like
Mm,
immediately butter.
mhm.
Okay. And so that may be your toy, that may be your thing. It may not. That's okay. You got to practice just a little bit. But here's another thing that I would say to this question of how do you do some self work? Like I would actually dom yourself in your self pleasure. You're not allowed to come. You're not allowed to come.
Oh. Oh.
And
Oh.
so you can put yourself in chastity,
Oh.
right? So chastity play is super hot. And so what you can do is like you can edge yourself. for
Oh,
an hour. Get yourself, she's doing a yoni wand class in a couple of days here, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So get yourself a yoni wand and fuck yourself silly, but never let yourself come.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually talk dirty to yourself. Be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you love that pleasure, don't you? You
Mm-hmm.
can't come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that would
Oh,
be a really great one. Yeah, yeah, I highly recommend that like self-doming.
yeah, I think I'm getting a Shibari thing on Monday, actually.
Ooh,
Getting tied up.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very excited.
Yeah.
Um, and then we got a question here, like just I think tagging on that, like, what if there's a high
hmm
degree of numbness involved?
hmm hmm There's a
Yeah.
high degree of numbness. Numbness, and maybe you can just respond directly in because it's a direct message, but is it genital numbness or emotional numbness?
Yeah,
And
that's a
I'll
good.
answer this other question here in the meantime. How do you reframe being open to kink? Great question. And Dom's after betrayal and abuse by a long-term partner and Dom.
Mm,
I just want to put my hand on my heart when I read that question. And I cannot tell you how many women I have talked to who have been in this situation.
mm,
And I'm going to tell you myself, I was also in a situation with an extremely narcissistic, controlling Dom who fucked with my mind for a year. And it's hard to get out of that. But I think ultimately, here's what I'll say here. Like after being with that person, I put myself in a position where I said, okay, I actually want to learn the techniques and tools that he was using on me. Because he was a fantastic dom. Like I
mm.
just need to admit that. Like there's a reason that this person had me so hooked because he was good. He knew how to immediately get me to surrender. He knew exactly what words to say and how to do it. And I was like, okay, if there are people like that out there doing this unethically, doing this to, get his own, I don't know, his own narcissistic,
Jollies. Yeah,
jollies,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I am an ethical person, and I think it's really my duty to be able to do that for the world, right? To
Mhm.
be able to use these for a healing techniques, right? Like, so I would recommend if you want to get over your last dom who abused you, learn to dom.
Oh,
Learn to step into that Dom energy because
oh,
I guarantee you, you will know how to say no and you will understand the gift of surrender. Because when someone bows in front of me in surrender, like I am so honored because I know what it takes to get there.
mm,
I know what it takes to get there. And
mm,
again, we should not be giving this up willingly.
Beautiful question.
Yeah. Okay,
Beautiful
yoni numbness.
question.
Okay, sorry, we're going back to this. How do you work if there's numbness, emotional, and yoni? Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of things. I would look into genital de-armoring, somatic sex, excuse me, sexological body work. You can look on practitioners who do this.
Mm,
Rahi Chun, I believe is his name, offers a class on this online and he's in the Bay Area and he
mhm,
does hands-on work as well. There's a
mhm,
lot of practitioners who are like sexological body work is in that gray area, so they don't always widely advertise, but
mhm.
they're practitioners who actually do genital contact with trauma-informed practices. Okay, so my experience as I'm studying somatic sex education, like we're heavily trained in how to deal with trauma, how to recognize trauma, how not to re-trigger trauma,
Mm.
how to unpack trauma. And so find a practitioner who can do something like that will really go at the pace of your nervous system. And Tammy Lynn Kent also, there's a book that she has called The Wild Feminine, which has about, I don't know, 30,000 practices in there for working with genital numbness as well. So I would recommend checking that book out.
Tammy,
Tammy Lynn, Tami.
Tammi.
I think I don't remember if it's two, Tammy Lynn Kent. And her book is called The Wild Feminine.
Feminine. Okay.
Yeah, and there's almost like too many practices in that book. So it's more of a workbook, but
Yeah.
it's a fantastic book. And so one of the things that she does is genital mapping, right? And so you would
Mhm.
actually use your own fingers and you would go
We're
into,
gonna do that
yay,
we're
perfect.
gonna be doing that in the
Yep,
yoni de-armoring with the yoni
yep,
wand. You don't have to have a yoni wand. You can actually use your fingers. That
great.
is,
Yeah, so
I think that's on Saturday.
look at this great resource you
Yeah.
have right here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So,
Great question.
yeah, and we'll just continue to ask questions as they roll in, or I can just keep on talking because I can talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you have a few more like kind of pieces before we get into some practice? Or do we want to get into
Yeah.
some practice and
I
then?
want to talk about a couple of things. Okay, so I want to talk about something around power. And I alluded to this around the idea that we tend to think of power as power smashing someone down.
Mm,
That's usually when we think of power, we're like, oh, power is bad. Okay. And we also think seduction is bad. Anyone here, like chat, I want to actually see in the chat, I would like everyone to tell me what you think of when you hear the word seduction, seductress, enchantress. What do you think of? Yeah, okay, so I see it started the art of seduction today, manipulation, sexy, hot, powerful, succubus. Yeah, the word makes me cringe. Yes, drooling. Yeah. Yep, seduction, I think of manipulation. Yeah, so we've got two for manipulation. The succubus, right? I think that is probably the most common, kind of archetype. It literally means to lead astray. I had no idea. So, ooh, magnetism. I like that one. Right. So seduction, I want to just blow up this idea that seduction is a very, very bad thing. Like we're the Jezebels, right? Like we're the
mm.
whore of Babylon if we use sex to get things that we want. And the reason why I want to blow this up and how I want to blow it up is by
Blow it up, baby. Blow it up.
pointing out that, we never question when men use their powers of physical strength and intimidation to get what they want. We've never questioned that. Police officers, perfect example, right? They go around with guns on their belts. I just got pulled over the other day, and it's like that thing that he like comes up and he's like, it's like that immediate, like he's like,
And you're
puts
all
you in your
scared.
place.
Yeah.
But we never say that's unethical. That's the wrong way to use your power. It's because seduction is a feminine power.
Interesting. Oh, I
Yep.
feel like I'm just having like, wow, interesting. Huh. Wow.
Yeah. Right. And so we live in the
Wow.
patriarchy, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's no doubt that we have this problem with seduction. And we're like,
I'm gonna just
where we have in here, yep, I'll get to that one. What we have here is this, I'm loving this chat. Yeah. What we have in here is this place where like women aren't allowed to use their sexual power. So remember in the 80s when all the women started working in corporate offices and the fashion went to women in suits, right? It went from women in dresses to women in suits. They had to match the men. They even had, remember the 80s when they had
Oh
the big
yeah.
shoulder pad?
Yeah.
Because it was like they're trying to show that they have that same kind of physique, right?
Uh,
And so imagine what a corporate office would look like if you had a woman in like this outfit, right? And trying to like climb the corporate ladder wearing a low cut, lacy dress. Imagine what that would do to corporate
yeah.
America or corporate Canada, wherever you are.
Bought one of those suits at my first job out of college. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to introduce the fact that like power, when I'm talking about Dom energy, dominatrix, DOMME being the feminine form, femdom. When we're talking about that, what we are talking about is seduction.
Oh my God. Can I share something?
Yeah.
So, okay, I just went to Portland a couple of weeks ago with some friends, and one of my girlfriends is like 50. She'd never been to a strip club before. Portland is like well known for having strip clubs, strip joints. And so we're like, well, let's take our friend, and let her have her first experience. And I remember what was the most fascinating thing about that evening was I was watching this guy and he had a private dancer, like, and he was like, it was so fascinating. He was just like, and I was like, oh, this is like what men try to contain. Men try to
Exactly.
contain
Yes.
how, like, if you ever notice, like, when I was younger, man, I'd be like, in junior high, and I'd be like, can you sharpen my pencil? Like when I first started feeling my boobies coming online and like that energy, and it was so fun to play with. And they would be like, yeah, I'll go sharpen your pencil, But I love that. I fucking love that. It's
because men
beautiful.
are reduced to like blubbering messes. Like when a woman is like fully in her seduction power, and by the way, this can happen from both the surrendered side and from the commanding side.
But it's also a gift, right? Like
It's such a
it's like
gift. It's such a
like
gift.
men also love feeling that way. They love
Oh, they do.
that's like
Yeah,
them being in that surrendered state.
exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
And that's why men will always seek out femdoms. Okay. That is why men will always seek out femdoms. In fact, a lot of submissive clients, a lot of like I was teaching a workshop a few weeks ago and I was overhearing a couple talk about this. And he said to her, I am so alpha in all of the rest of my life. And all I
oh,
want is
yeah.
for you to step up and just tell me what to do sometimes.
Wow. Wow.
And we all want that, right? Like, have you
Yeah.
ever been in a position where you have a leader in front of you and you're like, I would do whatever you want. And it doesn't matter sexually or not, right? Like I've
Yeah.
had bosses in jobs that I'm like, whatever you tell me to do,
Yeah.
I'm there for it because I
Yeah.
trust your leadership so much.
Hmm.
It feels so good. It feels so good. And it feels great to give yourself as this gift,
Hmm.
and like, yeah, use my body, use my mind, whatever you want to
Well, maybe
do.
not with your boss, but
No.
that's a whole
I
nother
mean,
fantasy
you're
right
welcome.
there.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
whole
a
nother
different,
fantasy.
that's a whole different movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And then is there anything you wanted to speak on in terms of like the energetic state of
Yeah.
domination and
Okay.
submission
Absolutely. Okay.
before we get
So
into practice? Because we do want to get into
yeah, there's some
practice.
great practices that we
Yeah.
have here, and I'm going to use Miss Samara here as one of my
Okay.
examples. Um, the energetics of the surrendered state versus the dominant state. This is very important. I think if you're ever interested in learning how to be a dominant or learning how to be a submissive, because they're like, look, being a submissive takes training. It takes training. It doesn't just happen. Okay.
Well, yeah, go watch Baby Girl in the movie theaters right now
Yeah.
with what's her
I
name?
haven't seen it yet. Nicole Kidman.
It's
Yeah.
but they're just like fucking around and finding out,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
that's sometimes how it
It
is.
is. Yeah. And
But
you have to learn, like the submissives training has to do with understanding your limits. So this is when you look at the energetics
mm,
of submission
mm,
and surrender. The energetics go like this. So they're meaning that they are always inwardly focused. They're always inwardly focused. So a submissive is in that feeling state, that non-thinking state, that sense of just absolute sensation and emotion. And this is all you are at this point, right? And so you're noticing the inner landscape. That's what it
mm,
is. And if you get into subspace, your mind shuts off, and it's brilliant.
mm,
For all of us overthinkers, this is medicine. And then on the converse, the polarity of that is the dominant state, which is attention out on. Okay. So you put your attention on the submissive. And it's not outward and looking at all different directions. Like the dominant state of attention is looking directly at one point in the universe.
mm.
There's nothing else except for that. And the beauty of that is that you actually dissolve as the dominant. When you're doing it right, you actually dissolve because all you see is your submissive.
And you have to because sometimes like if the person that you're exploring this with, like you have to watch their breathing. You have to
Yes.
make sure that they're
Yes.
not going into a freeze state. You have like my
Hmm.
former lover, like he was so like the moment that he could see me like
Yes.
tense up, he would check in. Like you have to be really
Hmm.
aware of, I mean, if you're expressing care,
Yes.
right?
You
Like,
absolutely have to be. And this is why
yeah.
I always have safe words. And you must don't ever let a dom tell you. I've heard this happen more than once. A dom will say, "Oh, we don't need safe words." Bullshit, red flag, get out. And so if you have safe words in place, absolutely you need them. You also need not words if if you have a ball
Yeah.
gag in your mouth or
The
something.
handkerchief that you drop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah. And so but really what I'll say though is that I oftentimes don't even need safe words. And the DOMs that I play with as when I'm a sub would never need a safe word because they are so attuned and I am so attuned to their bodies, right? I am constantly watching a submissive. Is this too much? Are they surrendering their will when they don't really want to? You as a dom, and then you have to calibrate that according to what your submissive is doing and
Mhm.
either scale it back or go stronger. But safe words are important. Don't get me wrong. You need them. And I have used them before.
Yeah.
I've had people call them. I've called them, right? Super important.
Mm.
Super important. And if you're tuned into the energetics, you'll often find that there's just a flow there and it doesn't feel clunky like that. You don't have to be like, red, you know, because your Dom will look at you and be like, you're at red. I'm going to untie you. Yeah. Yeah.
Was there a question there?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
No. Okay, great. Yeah.
okay. Thanks for tuning
Yeah,
in when you're
thanks for
sick. This is a
yeah.
great workshop.
So the end, okay, so I want to play with one exercise here that will demonstrate what I'm talking about with this attention in as the sub versus attention out. And both of these have to do with seduction, the power of seduction, okay? This is a form of kind of eye magic that we can do. There's so much power that's in the eyes, and we underestimate what we can actually do just by simply looking at someone in the right way. So we're going to play with this right now. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to practice a penetrating gaze. And how we're going to do that is you're going to first close your eyes, including you, Venus.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah.
And you're going to put all of your attention, all of your awareness to the very outer edge of your eyeballs. Like that very tip, like as if you only have one laser beam of light. And now you're going to open your eyes and you're going to just stare at someone in this Zoom room. Anyone. And you're going to allow your gaze to penetrate them. They won't know you're watching them. And you're just going to penetrate them with your eyes, as if you have laser beams. The energy is moving outward directly onto another person. And you're studying them and you're noticing things about them. What do you notice? What kind of facial features do they have? How would you describe them? I notice you have bangs. I notice that you have glasses. I notice that you have hair that's falling over your shoulders. I notice you're wearing this color or that color. I notice your background. Let yourself go fully and penetrate with your eyes into another woman here. And by the way, if your camera's off or you're on the recording, you can do this in just an inanimate object in your room. Photograph. Notice how your body responds when you're fully penetrating someone with your eyes. Okay, close your eyes again. Take a few deep breaths in. Notice if you had any feelings about that, any resistance, any like, woo, that was hot kind of feelings, or any kind of neutral stuff. You're like, that was actually way easier than I thought it would be. And now, imagine all of your awareness at the backs of your eyeballs, just responding to the backs of your eyeballs, receding back there, as if you could drink in everything in the universe and it could serve you. And for this one, open your eyes and tilt your chin just ever so slightly, and then gaze at someone else on the screen and drink them in. Beckon them to enter your field with your eyes. Continue to draw that energy to the back of your eyeballs, softening, inviting them in. Noticing not them this time, but noticing you. What does it feel like to let someone into your space? And close your eyes and come back to neutral. Just take a few breaths with your eyes closed, and you can kind of just bring your awareness back to the middle of your eyes. I'd love to hear in the chat. How was that for you? Was one easier than the other? Was one harder? Also, would love to hear voices if voices are open to being heard. If you want to just unmute yourself, I'd love that. I love voices.
Maybe like one or two.
Hmm.
Hey,
Hey,
Michaela.
Michaela,
Yeah.
go ahead and unmute.
Hi. That was really cool to feel the shift between the two. I loved penetrating.
Mm.
I felt so like I just had this smile on my face. Like I just loved taking someone in. But at the same time, I think because of the specific um, kind of experience, knowing also that someone was penetrating me was hot, so I kind of knew I was on display. But then doing the other one, drinking, letting someone come in, I felt, I felt a little like it wasn't so easy. It wasn't so hot. It was a little scary.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. We tend to have, most people tend to have one or the other is a lot easier.
Mm.
And you'll see examples like Marilyn Monroe is one example of someone who just has those like receptive eyes
Mm.
and you just kind of like fall into them, right? And then you have people who are like really, really comfortable. Like she would probably have a really hard time giving that penetrative stare at someone, right? Um, Madonna is somebody, interestingly, who kind of does both. If you look at
Mm.
different pictures in her career, she is really good at switching into both
Mm.
of those. So, yeah, thank you. That's really good observing. Okay, I want to read some chat comments here. I felt one more. I felt one. I think the first one more with someone I felt more intuitively connected to. Yeah. The first one was way easier and hot. Second one was interesting and enticing. Yeah. First one, I felt some butterflies and heat. And second one, I felt so calm and relaxed.
Mm.
That is okay. So that is exactly the way, and everyone has a different perception and different experience of it. But that's how I feel. Like I feel
Mm.
heat. I feel like real turn on when I have the penetrative gaze. I'm more comfortable in the penetrative gaze unless I'm extremely comfortable with someone. Like the funny thing about me is that like my real lovers think of me as extremely submissive. Like the people who like really,
You, of all
yeah, like people
people.
who have like really gotten me.
Yeah.
And that's when I can go into that
Mm.
space, but I don't do that with everybody. And it's a gift. I really see it as a gift. But
Mm.
that, yeah, the second one, I felt so calm and relaxed,
This one
right?
definitely exposed me as the filthy switch I am.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
Powerful and hot to do the intense gazing, but also felt an intimate, submissive connection to let someone penetrate into me. It's very vulnerable, which feels great.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
love that vulnerability connected to great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's not a bad thing to be vulnerable. In fact, we should allow ourselves spaces where we are consciously cultivating vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see there's another practice we get to do?
There is another practice. I'm going to introduce
Okay.
it first, and then we're going to go into some
Okay.
breakout rooms. Okay.
Okay.
This has to do with asking for things. And we are, as women, we are socialized to like not really ask for things, to like
Mhm.
not have our needs met, to be like, no, 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 you go ahead. I don't need that last piece of cake. Go ahead and, you take it. And I just want to say how lovely that is. Like, I don't want us to criticize ourselves and say, like, oh, we're so shitty and we're so, we just forget about our own needs, right? I want to actually acknowledge the fact that it is extremely beautiful to surrender our own needs at times. And the world needs more people who are willing to just like not take the last piece of cake, you know? So I just want to say that. And we deny the feminine power of that service, of that like giving over oneself. We deny that as a form of power. And so I just want to say, like, this is amazing. I don't want you to get rid of doing that. And I also want you to have the experience of being able to ask for what you want when you really want it. So there are two ways of asking for something. The first way is a surrendered form of asking. And that has to do with that reflection inward, that I statement that I feel like Phoenix made me some tea right before we came on here. And I was joking with her about it, about the surrendered ask. I'm like, I feel very thirsty. And I don't want anything caffeinated because it's so late. So would you make me a cup of non-caffeinated herbal tea? And she, oh, of course. And then she's like, do you want milk? No, I really don't want milk. I just want some plain, I feel like I would rather be just without milk, just, kind of a clear liquid, right? So I'm noticing my feeling state and my desires. Does that make sense to everybody? Feeling state and desires with the surrendered ask, okay? And we'll do a little practice round here. Now, the commanding ask is different. The commanding ask is extremely direct. It does not, like my feelings don't really matter as much. It is what you're going to do. So a commanding ask would be like, Phoenix, you've asked me to come on and do this talk. Go make me some tea. I don't want it caffeinated. Go in there, make me some tea. Find like the decaf chai I know you have in there, and don't put any milk in there. And I want the water to be exactly 80 degrees Celsius. Okay, so, and then she knows exactly what I want. She knows exactly what I want in that scenario. And the other way too, she has a sense of what I want, but it's a lot more of in the I understand my feeling state versus here's what you're going to do. And this is when I was saying before that we've all had these experiences where we've had leaders in our lives where we've just been like, yeah, I'll just fucking surrender to you, whatever you want. And it's usually because they tell us clearly what they want us to do. They tell us clearly, like in a military situation, a military leader isn't like, well, I feel like it'd be best.
I
No.
hear the heads like shaking. Yeah.
A million, and there's also a time and place for the other surrendered ask, right? Like when you're in an argument with your partner and your partner has hurt you
You're just like
very badly.
like, babe, I'm feeling really tender. Can you just hold me?
Exactly. That's a surrendered ask.
Yeah.
It's a surrendered ask. And so, you are so good at the surrendered asks. I love to play with personas. And so this is like one of my favorite necklaces. And Phoenix is going to wear this as an, lift up your hair.
Okay. See, it wasn't like, well, I'm thinking maybe you should lift up your hair.
No, it's just lift your hair up so I can
Lift
get
your
this
hair up.
bitch necklace on.
Oh boy. We were laughing because it was like right before my roommates are here and they're like, what are you guys up to tonight? I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna let my best friend Dom me. I'm just joking.
Okay.
Okay.
So I often find that when we want to get into a different state of mind, we have to do something like put on a necklace that says bitch across it.
Yeah.
Like I put on these earrings. I was like, I wore this outfit all day, but I put on these earrings, I put on the lipstick, right? Like it just gets me into a different frame of mind.
For some people, it's heels,
Totally.
a mask.
Yep. There's so many different things out there. And so if one of these is harder than the other for you, I would ask you to find some costuming.
Almost like an archetype, like developing
Yes.
an archetype for yourself that's like the sex kitten,
Yeah.
right? Which could be like, it's very common, right, to get a collar,
Yeah.
like a little kitty collar.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see one over here. Yeah, a little sex kitten collar.
Yep.
And then the other, option is like to get something that gets you into the Dom energy. I have all these
Yes.
floggers. For me,
Yeah.
it's like the hard spanky floggers,
Yep.
not the nice softy ones. They're like, I have one that has a cross on it, like
Oh yeah, you have the
leather.
crop. Yeah.
The riding
Yeah,
crops,
the riding
they're
crops,
stingy.
Yeah, the riding crop is it's a very
Like a
femdom
wand.
tool. Oh my God,
Yeah.
it is a wand.
Yeah.
When we are doing our immersive erotic theater shows, I play this very dominant character, and I almost always have carried a riding crop because it is just like it is a magic wand. It's like suddenly people will listen to me and they don't fuck up. So anyway, all right. So here's how we're gonna do it. When we go into breakout rooms, we're gonna each have a chance to do asks of the other person in the surrendered form and in the commanding form. So again, just to be clear, I'm gonna because it's sometimes harder for me to go into the surrendered form. I'm gonna practice with Phoenix to ask you something in the surrendered form, and then you're gonna practice with me in the commanding form.
Okay. So vice versa.
You have the bitch necklace on. You're officially the bitch. And so this gives you permission to be a bitch, right? Because we have this association as women, like if we're direct with what we ask, then we're bitches. And I'm going to tell you, good.
So I guess a good question is like, do we play with any scenario that we want to like, okay.
Anything at all.
Okay.
And here's the other person's, when you're partnered, the other person is just simply saying, like,
yes, mistress.
Yes, goddess. Let's do yes, goddess. Okay. So, okay, so I'll begin. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same practice with my eyes where I'm just going to really let Phoenix enter my space. And I'm noticing that it feels vulnerable to do this on a screen with a bunch of people. But I'm also noticing I feel safe enough with Phoenix to invite you into that level with me. So um, I'm feeling like it would help me if you would stroke the inside of my palm. Would you do that for me?
Okay, hold on. Question. So how do I do a commanding?
No, you're just playing the response right now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay. So would you stroke my palm? It would make me feel a little bit more comfortable. And then so she's just going to respond, yes, goddess.
Yes, goddess.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
And you don't act
We're
like
getting
obviously
it
in
here.
the breakout rooms, you guys don't have to actually do these things, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, okay.
I've done this before where
Okay,
people
great,
like,
great,
yeah.
great.
So
Okay.
it's just role play.
Great. Yes, goddess.
Okay.
Okay, now my turn.
Yes. And then now you're going to command me. So that
Yes.
means you're not going to use I statements. I want you to. Nope. You're just going to go direct to action.
No, please.
Yep.
No,
No, please.
can you do
Can you?
this? No.
Nope.
Okay.
The fewer words that you use, the more power you will exude.
So I'm gonna actually just do that practice,
Mhm.
feeling from the edges of my eyeballs. I'm gonna also just kind of like lean back a little bit, take a bit of a stance here, and just actually feel it. Get down on the floor and crawl to me on your hands and knees.
Yes, goddess. That was good. She's good, right?
That felt nice. That was fun.
This is my thing with you. You're always like, I'm so submissive.
Well, I mean, there's a
You-
time and place.
You
There's
have
time and
power.
place.
You
There's
have,
time and
but
place.
like it's also beautiful. Okay. So questions about this. We're gonna
And
break
then
you
we're
up,
gonna
and then we're gonna
back and forth.
switch.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the only partner A, um, like the partner A will practice first surrendered ask and then a commanding ask. And
Oh,
then
okay.
partner B will just say, yes, goddess, to
Okay.
whatever you're asking. And you'll
Okay.
have 3 minutes to make your asks in both the surrendered way and then 3 minutes to do in the commanding way. We'll switch you, we'll prompt you in the rooms when it's time to switch. You'll switch partners. Partner B will then ask partner A in a
Okay.
surrendered format for 3 minutes and then in a commanding format for 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you run again, you can try a bunch, right? Like you can, do like a couple if you run out,
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I already did my question. Practice, play with
Keep
it.
going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Okay.
You will just allow, here's what I would say is like give yourself permission to want things.
Mhm.
Give yourself permission to want things and give yourself permission to want them in all sorts of formats.
And practice with poses too. Like what would be
Yeah.
a pose that's a commanding pose? Like maybe it's like,
Yeah.
get down on your knees and
Yeah.
beg.
And notice how your voice will change. Your voice should change when you're
Yeah.
in each one. And notice my voice when I'm teaching,
Mhm,
I'm in a
mhm.
far more commanding state.
Yeah. And so if you don't feel comfortable doing the practice, you can just stay here in the room. And then just don't enter a breakout room. And I'll just take a minute to rejig people. Okay. So if I don't see you going into the breakout room, I'll just repair you. So just give us a minute while we figure things out here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I did see,
I saw one person said they
yeah.
couldn't join. Okay.
So I was gonna watch all the different rooms, and then I might need to move. Yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a
Yeah.
okay. Oh, okay. Well,
They
oh,
should do this
okay.
automatically.
One would think, right? One would think. Okay, so they're in a room. Great. Okay.
Cool, you got
Great.
everyone.
Oh,
Nice.
great. Okay, so 903.
Okay, I'm just gonna type the instructions in here.
Oh,
A.
just make sure everyone's great. Oh, I'm gonna pause. All these thingamadingies,
I know,
eh?
right?
Like it's like, oh, I think so. That's okay. That's okay. We got a little inside scoop. Little inside scoop. It's okay. I don't know. Oh boy.
Oh my God.
The things we talk about. Yeah, it's fun. Welcome back. Everyone's starting to come
Hello.
back. Ooh.
Look at these faces coming back.
How's everyone feeling? Yeah, we wanna hear from some of
Yeah.
y'all about how that was for you.
What
The
was it like?
challenge, the resistance.
Feel free to unmute if you want or just drop in the chat.
Yeah, and again, too, if you're nervous, yeah, Sherry. Yeah, Sherry,
I,
Sherry.
I wanted to I wanted to do the things like it wasn't just yes goddess. It was like um
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So you felt that feeling of like actually the power that was over you in that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing. And
yeah. I wanted to fulfill the request.
did you feel it from the surrendered asks and the commanding asks?
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Lovely. Yay, congratulations.
Huh?
What other reactions did y'all have?
Hi.
Hi.
I thought that I would be better at the submissive one, but I wasn't. I was actually better at the other one. But I took an approach of envisioning a relationship that I had where I wasn't that person and I should have been. So it's
Mm.
actually very healing to really use that as a theme of being in relationship with a man. And I just was so submissive to what was going on. Um, and Links held a lot of good space for that.
Yeah,
So yeah,
nice.
thank you.
Nice. Yeah, good to hear that.
Mm, these are great. Beautiful. Yeah, a lot will come up, right? When we
Hmm.
explore our power in this way. That's why kink is so powerfully healing. Uh,
Reading the chat here. I felt so much more comfortable with my own surrendered asks, but loved my partner and her commanding asks. Yeah.
mm, mm,
Yeah. Yeah. And that, yeah,
mm.
yeah, it's so awesome to see someone in their power. Like when Phoenix was doing that ask of me, I was like, damn, girl, yeah, I'm gonna get on my hands and knees, like it's so hot. And it's like, and that's why, like, when someone's truly stepped into the
Mm,
like the integrity
yeah.
of their desires, it is hot.
Hmm. Yeah. And sometimes I lead clients actually in that process where I
Mhm.
give them like commands on a piece of paper. And this is actually great practice that you can
Yeah.
give to a partner. If you want to play with this and you're like, but my partner is so flowy and you know, you're like, write down the commands on a piece of paper and you play a game where they have to read them out, right?
Hmm.
Fishbowl style. And you do and you make it so that there are commands that you would do, like crawl on me toward, on your
Hmm.
hands and knees.
Yeah.
Lick some milk from a saucer. Like you can play around with things that you feel comfortable with,
Hmm. Hmm.
but they also get to practice
Yeah.
being commanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's actually a great thing if you have a partner or yourself who isn't sure if they know how to command, because it's like if I worked with a couple here actually in this house, she filmed it, where, he was submissive. He tended to be submissive and she's switched and she really wanted him to, command her. And so that's a cool thing that you can do is actually like because I came in as like the third party and I was like,
Directing.
directing him to direct her. And you can do that by having those little notes, right? Like, no, here's like a fish bowl that you're gonna have, you're gonna pull something out, and then that person has to command you to do that.
Yeah.
That'd be hot.
Yeah.
Okay, reading more. I'm so much more comfortable with surrendered, and I am naturally more empowered and drawn to commanding ask, which I need to work on. Interesting. Okay, so here's a common theme. This is why I'm very interested in doing work with women to, um, help them access the state of like what I would call wise surrender, because we are in this age where like women are so fucking awesome. Like we do everything and we can do it all so well. And we're just out in the world kicking ass everywhere we go. And like we still need a place to relax. Like we still need someone to just really hold us. And that's what happens is that we like go and like we find these DOMs on dating apps and then we get our minds fucked, right? I don't want to see that happen anymore.
Mm,
So yeah,
mm,
you need to have the surrender to ask, right? And it's like you think yeah.
mm.
Anyway, okay, so
Fearless.
Caroline, go ahead.
Hey,
Hi.
I kind of just realized while you were talking that I thought that I would be better at the surrender task because I'm always like asking my friends very nicely to do things in certain ways, and I'm particular, but I found a way to ask it nicely. But when it comes to like being submissive bedroom wise, I'm like, just do things to me. I don't want to ask. Like, I don't want to have to ask for anything, brain off, not thinking. But when you said something about connecting to your desires, I was like, oh, maybe because I don't exactly know what that is.
Yeah.
So I can't ask for it. I don't know. Just a
Beautiful.
thought.
Okay, so
Oh,
here's
question.
this is a really important thing to say. Like every time a sub says they have no limits, it's such a red flag for me because it means that they just haven't explored their limits. And so what I want to offer you is two things. Number one, it's when you find someone that you can truly, genuinely trust, it's really hot to just be like, whatever you want to do. It's called free use, like whatever you want to do, my body is completely yours. Okay. Super hot, super, super hot, but it requires a tremendous amount of trust. Like this is not a first date. Even like, like I'd say several months in, like once you've gone through that period of like, you've gone through a few little rocky moments and like, how that person deals with conflict, right? That's when you might introduce something like that. And, yeah, okay. So I'll just leave it there because I know we have a bunch of stuff coming in the chat. But yeah, so I just want to say thank you for sharing that. That's, it's a big realization.
Well,
and learning your limits is so big.
Yeah, and I think too, like also too, if we feel like we've never had the space to explore what our desires are, that there's a way that we can start to actually like acknowledge. So something that I've learned that has been really helpful for me is actually getting in touch with your fantasies, right? So, for me, like, again, people draw their fantasies from all different places. For me, my imagination is very rich, and actually thinking about like what one of my like think about what your hottest fantasy would be and actually construct it. If you can cast the main characters, you can write the script, you can direct. And for me, when I went into this, I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to have like my lover, push me down on a settee. I'm wearing a cocktail dress and he just like smells my panties. And then he's like, I'm obsessed with your pussy. And then like teases me, And I went into this whole thing and I was like, whoa. And I shared it with the partner I was doing this practice with. And I was like, holy fuck, I've never had that fantasy before. And what it did was it revealed to me that I need someone who's like fucking obsessed with me, like in a healthy way, but like obsessed, right? And dominant in that way. So I think that exploring like what would your hottest fantasy be and actually writing it out can really help you start to explore where your desires land,
Absolutely.
There's a really great question here.
Can you please speak on healthy ways to meet partners to practice with in real life? I am intimidated but open to sex club or yeah. Okay. Yeah. So great question. Okay. I know I've said several times in here, don't just go out and find your random dom on a dating app. Okay. That said,
That's it.
okay. All right. I have many things like, so this is why I'm saying it's really helpful to know the dom energy. When you are, and I'm not saying you have to go and play in that space, but like when you know the Dom energy, you will know the questions to ask. You will know the questions to ask. You will know things like, how do you deal when I have sub drop, which is when you sometimes go into like a shame spiral if you've gone to like some really kind of extreme play. Or sometimes not even that extreme. It can happen from just, being called a slut and realizing that you kind of like being called a slut. Um, Sorry, we got a little noise background here. And
No, it's okay.
so yeah. So if you're called a slut for the first time and you're like, oh my God, that turned me on in the moment, but then afterwards you might have this sub drop, like you might have a little shame kick in, right? How is your Dom gonna deal with that, right? Partners to Dom specifically. Oh, yeah, that one is easy, girl. That is where dating apps can be really handy, okay?
Field.
I guarantee you, Field is a great dating app. I guarantee you, I actually was having this conversation with someone who's starting to do some dominatrix work. And I said to her, she was asking me, how do you find clients? Like, how do you find like sub practices, not necessarily clients that we're paying, but practice clients? Like, go on a dating app, put a profile up there where you don't necessarily have your face showing, right? Like get some sexy picture of yourself that shows that commanding, powerful energy and say, literally, I am looking for submissive partners to play with. Here are what the things that interest me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make your list of desires there. Like, here's the type of play I want to experience. Like, I want to explore someone who would let me peg them, and I've never pegged anyone for the first time. I want
foot worship.
Foot worship, right? Like body worship, ass worship. There's so many things here. And all the
I like massage worship. So that for me, I was like, I just want people to come over to my house and massage me.
Yeah.
Not sexual.
She did a dating app profile like that. It was amazing. She did a thing. She was like, all I want is a massage buddy and a cuddle buddy.
Yeah.
And it worked. You got people and they were willing to do that, right? Yeah. For women on the apps, the world is your oyster. Like, there are so many more men on the apps than women. You are going to ask specifically for what you want, and I guarantee you your DMs will be flooded.
Yeah.
And then you can vet. You need to vet for making sure mental health is stable. This is big. This is really big because a lot of subs will oftentimes have, especially men, have shame, tremendous amounts of shame. We want to make sure that they're not dropping into mental health issues because of play, right? They should have some experience with it. That's ideal.
I also find like my past lover, he was very connected with his heart, actually. So
Yeah.
feelings, his heart. Like if you met him, you wouldn't think that he was a dominant. Like, yeah, he was hot. I mean, you saw him. He was been
yeah.
No names. But very like commanding, but you wouldn't really know because he doesn't act like
the stories you tell about him versus how I saw him, I was like,
you don't really, but
those are the best doms, by the way. Like I love those kinds of doms that are just super, like, you would have no idea how kinky they are in the bedroom. That's my jam. Yeah. So I just got Field in particular is great for finding. If you guys haven't been on Field, it's like the only dating app I really go on, and I'm off and on all the time. But
it's just because people are more open with their desires on there.
For sure.
You're gonna find people that are a bit more like open-minded about sexuality. So it is, and you can be a bit more like Bumble. You put a picture of like yourself in something sexy, and they nix it, but you put yourself in a bathing suit, and they're like, oh, that's okay. Like it's kind of weird.
So I do recommend that. And like, it's a great way to practice asking for what you want. And it's also a great way to say no. Like, if you start talking to someone and they are too needy, right? Like, a sub should not need your communication constantly. Just like any partner, any friend, right? Like, if you can't get back to them in an hour and they get pissed at you about it, they are not ready for you. Okay. And they're most likely playing out their trauma wounds on you. Okay. Like, most likely. And you don't want to get into that. You're not their therapist. Okay, great. So did we miss any questions in the chat or anything else? I literally said, I am a brat. You need to be stronger and sassy. So good. Exactly.
Cult leader vibes. Oh, I love
that. Looking for cult leader vibes. Yeah, I'm a brat. So this is the beautiful thing, because brats, I think I said this in the very beginning, brats are like, they'll act up on purpose. And it's when you find a person who's a brat tamer, they're not afraid of it. But some doms will just straight up, like, I interview people that I play with. Like, I interview them. And there was a dom that I was considering playing with at one point, and he couldn't handle, we were just texting. We didn't even fool around. And we were just texting. He couldn't handle the brattiness. He was like, couldn't handle it. And then, he gets intimidated by it. But then, like the guy that I'm seeing right now, like, loves it. Like, he wants me to fight back a little bit. Like, he wants me to, like, be really bitchy. And I'm like, damn, that's it. Like, and then, like, it's amazing. So when you find someone who can really meet that.
Yeah. And if you're someone who wants to explore like maybe what a healthy expression of Dom energy feels like, there's some amazing professionals in the field. Like, man, I've heard of these guys in New York that are amazing. And they're men, but they also, it's almost like as a man, you have to uphold even more of a integrity and ethics, because if you don't, you're going to get canceled. Like, so like they'll come for you. So you have to be, so that's a really great way to,
Rat Trip 2026. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So it's a great way to explore is to, find somebody. And again, you still have to vet them, but, just explore the energy. And it doesn't have to be sexual. Again, it can be where you're getting tied up, where you're given commands, you explore your boundaries. And that's a really great way to explore what that's like, so then you can know. Right. And develop that.
Well, this is also something that I offer. Like, this is like, I want to be able to show more women what it feels like in your physical body to have your limits, to like be able to hold your limits in place and not have the pressure of having like, oh shit, this guy's gonna, blackmail me for my photos I send him, true stories that I've heard, right? Or, he's gonna fucking beat me, like for real, like it is scary out there. It is scary out there. And so the thing that we have to understand, that the surrendered power is knowing your limits. Like I know things that I'm like, I would just never do that. And like, I'm not gonna tell the whole story, but there was a story where I was with a lover in Italy. Do not tell the story.
Sorry, what?
You know the story.
Oh, okay.
But he asked me if I wanted to do something that involved another person, and I was like a clear no.
Mm.
And the beautiful thing was that he totally respected it. And he was like, okay, yeah, get it. But I knew that was a hard no for me. And when I'm solid in my no and I feel legitimate in being able to say my no, then a true Dom will listen to you, and they will say, okay, got it. They will not push. It's not a point of negotiation at that point. Yeah.
Beautiful. Great. Great. Well, we are at time, everyone. This is 9:30, man.
Yeah.
It's been a juicy deep dive. Thank you for all showing up so courageously, whether it's having your faces here, showing up on your phones, watching the replay. Yeah, it's been really fun to have this conversation with all of you. And she actually has a really great masterclass on goddess energy. So I'm going to send this out with the replay so you can access it and go a bit deeper.
Yeah,
And
we
again,
go into personas, go into the submissive and the commanding personas so that you can really feel what that's like. Like you get to imagine, like, do you want to be the teacher? Do you want to be the naughty schoolgirl? Do you want to be a little kitten? Right? Like, so you get to figure out your persona and play with that. And those are fun as hell. Like when you understand your persona, like I'm a lioness, right? Like that's like my persona. Like,
yeah, you are.
Like, and I will devour the fuck out of you, but like I will also just surrender myself to you when I find my lion, right? Like so that's you find your persona, and then that's when you shine.
And kink, these practices can be so powerful for rejuvenating relationships too. Like, it's powerful, right? When it's like a secret that only you two share and you explore. And it's like I've just seen so many relationships saved from the power of kink that were dying from a sea of vanilla.
Yes. Yeah, because especially long-term stuff, long-term relationships, like you can kind of get into the rut.
Yeah.
And then imagine if suddenly you and your partner were like different people, like a police officer and like a person who's been speeding, like imagine that. And then you go to a bar, right? And you're strangers at a bar and you get to like have some different kind of fancy. There's so many fun things you can do.
You go to dinner and he gives you one of those vibrating panties and he has the controls and he's like, I'm gonna fucking no, you can't come yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
don't follow this stuff. We could go on all night. Yeah.
We could go all night. We're probably gonna talk about it afterwards. We're gonna have a little slumber party.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you everyone for showing up. And again, if you have questions, you can also send her DMs on Instagram. I'll send that out with the replay stuff tomorrow. But yeah, thank you for showing up and
my Instagram in here.
Hey, there we go. Not the.
It's just at Body Storyteller. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Oh, so good.
Thank you so much for coming.
Now take what you've learned and practice
out into the world.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all. Good night, y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Good to see you both again.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Mwah.
Bye.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.